Here we go. So, so welcome to the almost month of Adar Shir, and the beginning of what's going to be, I think, a really great program. That Karina, you disappeared, and I see those beautiful flowers, but I still want to see your face. But yeah,
no, I'm here. Shoshana asked me if I could forward the information, so I put down the phone so I could send it to her. Yeah. I'm here though. I'm here. I'm just sending her.
All right. So just you mentioned that you were on this chat, and people were giving a lot of negative a lot of negative comments and negative feelings and negative everything, and people on so many different chats, whether it's WhatsApp chats, Facebook groups, or just out in the street or wherever. And I don't know if this is everybody's experience, but it's certainly my experience, that there's so much negativity out there and negative responses to other people who have different opinions. We're going to talk about that in a little while, but people, consumed with fear, anger, anxiety, anxiousness, which is the same thing as anxiety. It's a lot of stuff. So I'm on this one chat, and it's a lot of people are from Yerushalayim and Sfat and Eretz Yisrael, and they're very keyed into, these times being messianic times. And in the beginning, the chat was very inspirational and upbeat, and a lot of things that, Mashiach is coming, all these things, and Trump for sure is going to win the election, and everything was very optimistic and positive and whatever. And then things didn't go that way. And so Karina, when you're ready, if you want to tilt your screen down just so I see your face, if you don't mind, but you don't have to. But yeah. So then things started going into the Corona COVID story. And then, now in Eretz Yisrael, there's a huge pressure for everybody to be vaccinated, whether they really want to or not. It's becoming quite coercive. So there's a lot of negativity. And one of the women, Shifra Chana Hendry, I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she teaches a lot online. She decided that, something's got to happen. Something's got to happen. We've got to, create a new energy. Welcome, Shoshana. We got to create a new energy, and Adar is coming. And so she was saying, what can we do for Adar? What can we do for Adar? And then the thought was that she said that she's going to take on for 30 days of the month of Adar just to be in a place of complete joy and post on whatever social platform she has, something positive and upbeat about Adar, and that's her commitment. And right away I said, I'm going to do it also. I'm in. I think that's an amazing thing to, flood the world with positive energy. So I just want to read what she posted on her Facebook account, which is really beautiful. It's a picture, and I'm kind of showing you. It's like a
Shifra Chana what?
Hendry.
H-E?
Hendrie. Hendry. She's Chabadnik, and she moved to Eretz Yisrael, and she lives in Sfat. Anyway, she posted this picture of the, oops, I just lost it. This picture of this energetic network, and talking about everyone who was, listening to this commitment of Adar to be 100% committed to just, flooding our own consciousness and the world and our Facebook or our WhatsApps or whatever with positivity and, upbeat feelings, etc., etc. So I just want to read what she wrote, because Karina, when you started speaking, this reminded me so much of your message to the people that were on that very divisive and angry and frustrated chat. So she said, this is an image of collective consciousness. So that picture that I showed you, that whole energetic network, the lines are channels of information flowing through the consciousness of humanity, and the dots are individuals or collectives. Each of us continuously receive information from these channels and process it. And then we broadcast it out, and other nodes, it's an interesting word, nodes, pick it up and do the same. But it's mostly unconscious and reactive. So we get something and then we start to put it out and other people pick it up. We want to change ourselves and each other to become conscious broadcasters of joy, empowerment, love, and divine light. The Adar.
Can you say that again? It's so good.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. So we want to make sure that the stuff we're putting out is positive. And so we want to empower ourselves and each other to become conscious broadcasters of joy, empowerment, love, and divine light. The Adar Project will use the powerful divine energies and information, the Mazal and the Simcha of the month of Adar, which begins on Thursday night, and broadcast it out into the collective, creating a new morphic field of light, healing, love, connection, togetherness, valuing each of our diverse perspectives, and of course, joy. Everyone who wants to be a part of this project, an active generator or an active producer of, this energy, and simply has to share the energy and information with the people in their own world, on or offline, and empower them to do the same. And I just think that was great. And I think that if all of us, all of you take that on, in some way, it can be the most modest, and I'll speak obviously about this tomorrow in the Verbringen for Adar, but in the most minute way, which is just you make a commitment to yourself and you write something down in your journal, what you're grateful for, or you text one positive thing to one friend, or you put it on your WhatsApp thing, or your Signal thing, or your Telegram thing, or whatever, or you say it, but you make a commitment that each day you're going to somehow do something joyful, share something joyful, share something positive, and to utilize the energies of Adar that are coming into the world. Now, I prepared some other things that I want to say about Adar because it is a very powerful month, and there's so many pieces about the teaching of Adar that are so important for our own understanding of what we're doing in this world. And one of the understandings about Adar is that Adar, if you count from the first month of the year being Nisan, which is the way there's two ways of counting. One is that the year starts in Tishrei, that's the Jewish New Year. But another way is another way to count is it starts from Nisan, and it goes from spring, Nisan, and then the 12th month, the culminating month, is the month of Adar. And as each month, we always have an energy of the month, an area of healing of the month, a tribe of the month, a letter of the month. But let's just focus for a moment on the energy of the month and the area of healing of the month. And this, I think, is huge, like really, really big at this time when there's so many people struggling with their health and the world is in such a place of angst and disrepair in so many ways. So the energy of the month of Adar is the joy of oneness, which I'll talk about a little bit more, the joy of oneness. And the area of healing for Adar is joy and laughter. That is the way healing comes. And I know Shoshana has gotten into this thing where she's just singing and dancing and she feels the spirit of Mashiach in the air, and her response is, singing and dancing and feeling. So if you're feeling it, great, do it. And if you're not feeling it, you will come to feel it when you empower yourself to sing and dance. And I can imagine Susan saying, so what exactly are you singing and how exactly do you dance? And then I'm going to anticipate the question. Like,
I want the recipe, right?
yeah. So, just however you want. So the idea that joy and laughter can be a healing. I mean, Rabbi Nachman teaches that that sickness comes from a lack of joy and healing comes from joy. So obviously that's very simplistic, and it doesn't mean that if struggling with illness, you're not joyful. But it does mean that in order to empower in order to empower the healing capacity within ourselves, joy can be a very useful and upbeat and elevating emotion. And when we're trying to activate healing in ourselves and in the world, a lack of joy will lead to constriction, and constriction will lead to a lot of negative things. Constriction leads to constriction. The first thing that the word that keeps coming in my mind is fear, lack of joy, lack of confidence in oneself and in one's ability to heal. And this, obviously starts feeding into the work that we've been reading, and it's online, the work of Reb Nosson of Breslev, who's Rabbi Nachman's main student, who keeps talking about finding the Nakuda Tova in order to sing, to find your melody, to find your voice, to find your ability to pray, to find your ability to, to do so many things. That's a really big thing. So this aspect of joy and laughter as a path for healing is a huge thing. Then the idea that usually, we can say that we grow and we learn things and we accomplish things and we advance, and we can do all that learning and growing and advancing through suffering. Person has illness, a person goes into the dark night of the soul. Karina certainly can attest to that, and everybody on the call that I know who's here and I see right now, and anybody who's going to be listening, but for sure the people that are on the call right now, when we struggle and when we suffer and when we have trauma and when we have illness and when we see trauma around us, of course it's like the analogy of the oil, the olive that gets crushed in the olive press, and you crush that olive and you crush that olive, and out of the olive comes olive oil. And isn't this beautiful? The Jewish people are compared to the olive, and the olive oil is precious, and this and this and this. That's not the work of Adar at all. There is that work in other months, the work of learning through struggle and learning through suffering. But the month of Adar is really like a messianic foretaste of things to come. It's the 12th month after a whole lot of months of working. And this is the month when it's not about struggle anymore. It's the growth and the learning and the advancement and the elevation and the consciousness transforming through being in that place where it doesn't have to be a struggle anymore. It's kind of a whole other thing. Like, can you see the good? Can you appreciate? Can you have gratitude? Can you be joyful? Can you see, so that's the whole aspect. That's why the holiday of Purim is in Adar. It's not a small thing. Mitzvah to be happy. Mitzvah gedola, liot besimcha tamid. It's not an easy mitzvah, actually, to be joyful all the time. That's quite a lot of work required to fulfill that mitzvah. So that's the aspect, the area of healing, joy and laughter. Now, the energy of it is the joy of oneness. Now, this is also really deep, because the oneness is the oneness of light and dark. It's the oneness of heaven and earth. It's the oneness of, I don't want to say good and bad because that doesn't sound quite right, but it's, hi, sorry, welcome. It's the, but please mute yourself. So I'm happy to see you and I'm glad you're here, but just mute yourself if you can. Thank you. And everybody can unmute whenever you want if you have a question. We're talking about Adar, and we're talking about the joy of oneness. So this is really a deep thing, because we in such a headspace of polarity, of things being disparate and separate. And if I'm from, and if I'm a religious person, and if I'm trying to ascribe to a relationship with God, can I be involved in the physical world? And how do I get involved in the physical world? And can I unify physicality with my spirituality? Well, the holiday of Purim comes in the month of Adar, and we know that Yom Kippur is the holiday that's called a Yom, the day, Kippur. That's like Purim. Not Purim like Yom Kippur, but Yom Kippur is the day like Purim. What does that mean? Well, Purim is the really holy day, and Yom Kippur is the day that's like Purim. Why is Purim such a holy day? Because Purim is really the highest of the high. We're drinking, we're eating, we're celebrating, we're in community. People are really expansive and abundant. We're supposed to be giving gifts, and we're supposed to be actually inebriated. And what does that all mean? Well, that means that you imbibe alcohol to the point where you really don't see difference between blessing Mordechai and cursing Haman, or blessing Haman and cursing Mordechai. That you've got to that place of oneness, and you don't get to that from deprivation and from suffering and sitting alone and beating your breast and putting the ashes on your forehead and crying over the destruction of the temple. You don't get there by doing that. You get to this point of oneness, of unity with God, eating and drinking and being with other people, but you understand that everything is essentially godliness and God. And ein od milvado, there is nothing else. And you're so joyful because you've integrated heaven and earth. And if you think about it, last week's Parsha was Parsha's Yisro, which was the celebration of this great event of receiving the Torah. I don't know if that's Har Sinai behind me, but maybe Har Sinai looked like that. And what happened on Har Sinai? Hashem said, I'm giving you tools that what's above can come below, which means Kedusha, of heavenly holiness, can come down into your physical world. And your physicality, your sex, and your having children, and your cleaning diapers and cooking food and eating, and all of that becomes so elevated that it's going to go up there. And the distinction between up and down gets nullified, because what's down can become up and what's up can come down. Wow, that's amazing. That's what happened at Har Sinai. That's what makes Judaism such a compelling religion, because it's in living life. In every morsel of food you eat, and in every table that you set, and every flower that you pick to put in a vase on the table, and everything that you are involved in. Now, if you get lost in that, and the Gashmias becomes all-encompassing so that it's not carrying your Ruchnias, so you've kind of taken a path and you've lost your path a little bit, and you need to make the Gashmias serve the Ruchnias, and the Ruchnias, they both have to be serving each other, but not one getting overwhelmed by the other. When there's overwhelming Gashmias to the point that the Ruchnias is not keeping up with it, then it becomes distasteful, and then it's not it's not helpful. It has to be in balance. So you have this much of Gashmias, you've really got to have this much of Ruchnias to sustain it. But ideally, you're weaving one with the other and bringing heaven down and raising earth up. So no other month is this as possible as the month of Adar. And the letter of Adar is a kuf, which is kedusha, which is kabel, to receive, and korban, to offer. Just an interesting little thing. But the sages in the Gemara say that joy, misha nichnas Adar, marbim besimcha. When we enter into the month of Adar, we increase in joy. But this is what I like. The heavenly flow of joy this month comes down, but we must do our part. We have to claim it as well and increase it. It's not just, we have to do our part. So I think that's enough as introduction about Adar. And it was, Karina, your comments that you made were a beautiful segue into that teaching. And I also just want to say that we are going to be dedicating this class in memory of your uncle Sasha Ben Kalman, that his neshama should have an aliyah, and find peace and tranquility, and that your family should be comforted in the hour.
Thank you.
Many hours of.
Thank you, Bracha. Thank you.
So coming into the Parsha, which is actually really interesting that it's coming in this time of Adar, and you know, we had Matan Torah last week, and this awesome download of information through Moshe Rabbeinu, and then to the Jewish people, this information that changes, you know, the world forever, the 10 Commandments, the Jewish people, the concept of justice, and everything else that came down at that time. And then in this week's Parsha, we start looking at these commandments and trying to make sense of them. And then for the people who have been learning Parsha, you know, for many, many years, the astounding thing about Parsha is that every month it comes back, every week, every year you come back to that Parsha that you read, you know, this time last year, and you keep reading it and you keep reading it and you keep reading it. And of course, the trick is to find meaning in it again each and every year. So now we come, and somehow I have this feeling, I don't know why I have this feeling, but I'm sure many of you have this feeling also, that everything is different now. Everything is so relevant. And we spoke about last week, we spoke about coming into the midbar, this big empty space to hear words of Torah, and existentially, we're so challenged now. So many things are collapsing around us. And so every word of Torah is like, what is the message? Because we're so ready to hear the message because things are so crazy. So what is the message? So we get the Torah last week, and this week we start, it's Mishpatim, and it's all about taking those mitzvot and breaking them down and saying, like, what's, you know, this is what you do, this is what you don't do, you've got to be careful of this, you've got to be careful of that, you know, don't abuse this, let's just, so many little things that we have to know, you know, about servants, if your servant doesn't want to go free and he's your servant, and how to treat your servants and your slaves, and, you know, if you leave a hole open and somebody else's animal falls in it, what do you do? And if you strike someone and they're sick for a few days and then they pass away, like, what are all these things? And these are really the rules of how we're supposed to behave in our life. And can we look at them, and can we take them seriously, and can we live by them? Because we certainly need to be taking them seriously. And I'll just say, before I go on to the mitzvah, the particular couple mitzvahs that I really want to focus on, we spoke last week about kivod avaim, respect for parents, and I think that struck a chord with a lot of people. And it is a really astounding thought that we love God when we love our parents, because God orchestrated that we should come into the world through our parents, whether we become converts, whether we, had parents that were not very nice to us, whether we had parents who were actually quite unpleasant to us. That was God's choice. And we respect and show God honor and respect when we honor and respect our parents, and we honor and respect ourselves as being, like I said last week, exactly who we need to be. And then we don't have to covet or be envious of anybody else, because it's God's world and God chose, and that's how it's meant to be. Or you could say even our soul was involved in that choice before it came down. So in this week's Parsha, again, we have don't strike your father and mother. The idea of kavod, to have kavod for one's parents. I was watching some movie on Netflix or something, and a secular movie, non-Jewish movie, and it was just astounding to me. And I see this in American movies more than, let's say, Australian movies. There are not so many movies from other countries that I watch, but when you see an English, less so, but Australian for sure, because Australian is, many years behind America. But the way people are to their parents, it's like so disrespectful. I just couldn't kind of believe it. Like a woman's mother was trying to have connection with her daughter, and maybe the mother wasn't the perfect mother, but the way the daughter in the movie was treating her mother is like, oh man, she needs to go to some shiur. Kivod avaim. Like, this is really intense. So we take that seriously, that mitzvah of kivod avaim. It's really a real thing. And the word kavod, kivod avaim is kavod. Kavod is heavy. You got to give it its due respect. It has a weight that, it doesn't even, it's not even worth repeating. It's some stupid, irrelevant something that I watch when I've had my whole day, and then I'm like out for a few, not to be, not to suggest that that's the way one should behave. Anyway, there's laws about kidnapping. Actually, it says in this week's Parsha, you cannot curse your mother or father, which, in case you didn't know, is really like something really bad. And it goes on about if you lend something to someone, or you put it in their care for safekeeping and they didn't take care of it well, what happens? But the ones that the mitzvot that I want to focus on, and I know Susan maybe bought her own copy now of Rabbi Jonathan Sachs's book, is really the mitzvahs around the word empathy, caring for other people. And in the Parsha, it's very, very clear and very, very direct. And I just want to read how it's written in a couple different places, and I want to read them to you, all of them. So in I guess chapter 22, verse 20, it says, and I'll read it in English, or maybe I'll read it in Hebrew. Let's see. Okay. Yacharam bilti la'Hashem levado. Okay. V'ger lo toneh. And the ger, the stranger, you shall not abuse. V'lo tilchatzenu, and not oppress him. Ki gerim hayisim be'eretz Mitzrayim, because you were strangers in the land of Egypt. That's really intense. I'm going to read it again. So we're talking about chapter 22, verse 20. Lo toneh, V'lo tilchatzenu, sorry. V'ger, and the stranger, lo toneh, soneh, lo soneh, v'lo tilchatzenu, ki gerim hayisim be'eretz Mitzrayim. Don't abuse or hate, really. Soneh has that. Son. Don't abuse a stranger, and you shall not oppress him, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. So Rabbi Jonathan Sacks bases his whole essay on this idea of empathy, that because as Jews we were slaves in the land of Egypt, we weren't only slaves, but we were other. We were other. We were other than. We were different. And, you know, we started this year talking about Adar and a time for joy and a time for simcha and spreading gratitude and everything. But the fact that now we are getting in society into a very frightening, disturbing, terrifying moment in history where if somebody doesn't like the way you think, or somebody thinks you other, they can cancel you. They can stop being your friend because you don't think like they do. And this aspect of hating the stranger could be someone who lived next door to you your whole life, but they're strange to you now because they hold differently than you. So this is so there's the one aspect about it where you're hating the stranger, the newcomer, the foreigner, you know, the person who walks into shul who hasn't been there before, not to oppress and not to oppress and not to abuse. Now, Rashi actually says that this refers to verbal harassment in this first place where it appears, and you shall not oppress him. You shouldn't steal his property. You shouldn't steal anybody's property, but it's even worse if you steal the property of a ger. So, and then it says why? Because you also came from strangers. And then Rashi says a very interesting thing. Do not accuse your friend of a flaw that you yourself have. Any use of the term ger in the Torah means a person who was not born in that country, but rather comes from another country. But it also can be a person who doesn't come from your headspace. I mean, this is my extrapolation. Ger, stranger to the way you're thinking and a way of being. So this is this first mention. Then the pasuk continues that you should not persecute a widow or an orphan. And the words of the Chumash are really intense. If you will persecute him, I guess meaning the orphan, for he will cry out to me, and I will surely hear his cry. And my anger will burn, and I shall kill you by the sword, and your wives will be widows, and your children orphans. That is very intense, kind of karmic, very intense aspect. And Rashi tells us that the widow and the orphan are weak and defenseless, and persecuting them, you know, it could be kind of easy because they're vulnerable. And then there's a discussion amongst the Rabbanim, the Meforshim, if in fact it's just the widow and the orphan, or it's really anybody who's defenseless. The Torah is very, very, very clear here, and Hashem, I mean, the way it's written here is very, very clear. And, you know, there's going to be swift karma. Hashem doesn't want you to be insensitive to the widow and to the orphan, because they're vulnerable. And this is really intense. And then there's one more place where it says, there's one more place. Actually, this one has a different aspect. This is a different aspect. And it's also very clear. So I just read the one about the orphan and the widow. Kol almana V'yasom lo ta'anun. Every widow, orphan, don't persecute. And then here, this is really one that bears a lot of thinking about. And it's, I'll just actually I'll do a little, I'll come back to that in a second. And then this thing about not oppressing anyone because you were in Egypt yourself, it says again, you shall not oppress a stranger. You know the soul of the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. V'ger lo tilchatz va'atim yadatim et nefesh hager. You know the nefesh, you know what it's like to be in the body of a stranger. Ki gerim hayisim be'eretz Mitzrayim, because you were strangers in Eretz Mitzrayim. You were really in that experience yourself. And Rashi says on this time, he says, even a person, yeah, so that's pretty strong. Now, if I thought that all this was self-evident and didn't really need to be said, I wouldn't, it's very clear in the what's written here. And it's not complicated stuff. Be nice to the widow, be nice to the orphan, be nice to the stranger in your community, be nice to the person who comes into shul that you don't know, say hello, be kind, take care of people who are alone. If everybody was doing it, and this is the way our communities were and are and function, and everybody feels well taken care of, and people don't feel belittled for having different opinions or don't feel weird when they're different, then I wouldn't probably even have had the shir and stressed these things. But those things are not everybody's experience. People are not always doing these things. So it is helpful to see how absolutely clear it's written here in black and white. Very, very clear and very, very straightforward. And you don't need a lot of perushim on it. The next one, there is actually a very beautiful Chassidish perush on, a perush that will give us the actual words in the text, and then an extrapolation. We've spoken many times how you can learn a pasuk, and any verse in the Torah is like walking into a orchard, and you can walk in and just get the pshat, just the straight off the page meaning, the literal meaning. Remez is going deeper to what's hinted. Deis drosh is you dig more into the level of midrashim, and then sod, the samach at the end, sod is the secret Kabbalistic level. So on this one, we're going to dig a little deeper. So the pshat reads that Ki tir'eh chamor sonecha rovetz tachat masanu v'chadalta me'azuv lo azuv ta'azuv imo. Perhaps you will see the donkey of someone you hate lying under its burden. Would you not help him? Like, could such a thing come to your head that you wouldn't help him? Well, the Torah says you absolutely should help him. So if we have halachas that make us sensitive to nature, animals, even plants. We need to let the land rest. The Torah is teaching us to be very compassionate, and it's saying that your enemy, your donkey is burdened. The donkey of your enemy is burdened with a burden that is weighing on it. Don't walk away just because you don't like the guy. His donkey is suffering. You got to help him. Might come to you to think not to help him, but you should for sure help him. Don't be confused. So that's reading from the Chumash, and Jonathan Sachs starts off with his with his essay, and he says a very beautiful thing. He first of all, he says that in terms of helping those who are oppressed and helping those who are, the underdog, he says Jews helped Gandhi in the struggle for Indian independence. Martin Luther King was helped by the Jews in the civil rights in Africa, in the civil rights for African Americans. Nelson Mandela in South Africa fighting against apartheid. I was there. I know how Jews were at the forefront of helping, how the Israeli medical teams are usually the first ones to, come to natural disasters. And it's such a Jewish thing to do. And why is it? And Jonathan Sacks, Alav Shalom, blessed memory, he brings such a beautiful thing that I've never really thought about it before. He says, in our Chumash, we have a lot of stories where we see people suffering, and we don't hide away from the stories of their suffering. We see Hagar and Ishmael being sent out. A lot of people very upset about this story, and I can teach that Parsha, and I can tell you that, Ishmael was abusing, possibly threatening the life of Yitzchak, and Hagar was not subservient to Sarah, but we don't pretend that it didn't happen, and we read about how Hagar was sent out. Rabbi Sacks says that's so that we should see and appreciate the suffering of others. When Esav comes to get the blessing from Yitzchak, and Yitzchak has already given it to Yaakov, that feeling of bereftness and having been cheated, Jonathan Sacks is not afraid to write it. He says that's there so that we should develop compassion and empathy. And he says Leah's feelings when she knows she's not as loved as Rachel, that's there so that we should really relate and feel and recognize the humanity of the other, someone who's, suffering. So he tells a story, and this is what happens when you buy the teacher's book. You might be bored now when you read the book, or you read it and you're bored in the shir, I'm not sure. But he tells a story that he was in Japan. There was an American living in Japan who was there to study something, and he saw something on the train that was amazing, that a drunk person came onto the train and was being really obnoxious and scaring people, and people were feeling quite vulnerable. And this elderly gentleman just came up to this guy who was obviously drunk and very, very aggressive, and started talking to him and said, did you drink, what were you drinking, my friend? And, were you drinking sake? And the guy said, yes. And this older man started talking to him and saying, well, I like to drink sake. I drink it with my wife sometimes. And started talking to this guy, finding him and reaching him in his own place. And eventually this drunkard, violent person was sitting next to the old man and eventually crying into his shoulder, and the whole situation was de-escalated. But the idea was that this man had empathy for this drunken, abusive character, who turned out, of course, just to be a person in a great deal of pain. We know the famous story of, I think it's a Rabbi Nachman story, that the prince who thought he was a turkey, and he was under the table and thinking he was a turkey, and everybody was trying to tell him he's not a turkey. And when a doctor went down and kind of became a turkey as well, and talked him turkey to turkey, that's when his healing began. So Rabbi Sacks's life-changing idea, and he has a life-changing idea for every parsha in his last book that he wrote right before he passed away, which was Judaism's life-changing ideas. The life-changing idea number 18 from this week's parsha is, if you seek to change anyone's behavior, you have to enter into their mindset and then say the word or do the deed that speaks to their emotions, not yours. So that's one thing that Rabbi Jonathan Sacks is saying, and I'm saying even more, or adding to it, or saying yes plus. that we, in such a time of such segregation and divisiveness, where there's, you know, such hatred of one party to another party, that even if you don't agree with somebody else on the other side of a divide or side of the fence, to try to get into their shoes, at least appreciate why they're holding the opinion that they're holding on one hand. And on the other hand, this idea of being empathic and caring to those who feel other than is a mitzvah in the Torah. You can't oppress the stranger, even if it's a person who's strange to you because of the way they behave or the opinions that they have. So in conclusion, I just want to say that with this month of Adar coming up, and it's just about here, it starts tomorrow night. We know that Adar has brought great blessings to the Jewish people many, many times. The idea of nahapuchu, that things in Adar can be overchanged, that the energy of Adar is available for us to feel the unity, feel the oneness. Remember I said that the healing energy of Adar is the joy of oneness, finding oneness with another person who doesn't have to share your opinion, but this thing of distance, segregation, alienation, hostility, that's not very messianic. It's not very helpful. It makes us feel bad, and it continues to bring darkness into the world. Whereas if we can joyfully, empathically and empathically find aspects of other people that we can connect with, and we don't have to share their opinion, we don't have to be convinced by their opinions, but to, you know, break through this klipa of divisiveness that's so present, and hostility that is so present. May we be part of the effort to really bring light in a time when a huge amount of light is available, is necessary. There is a lot of light available, but it's being hidden now in all these negative attitudes and fights and fears and machlokeses, and, you know, a lot of negativity that Adar has the power to break through, and may we be able to be part of that. And that's my l'chaim.
Amen.
Oh, thank you. And just to reiterate that I'm going to be joining this effort that I said was started by Shifra Chana Hendry, that every month of Adar to make a statement of acknowledgement or do
Every day.
something every day, the whole month. I'm doing this for my joy. I'm doing this for my pleasure, not in a selfish way. Oh, I didn't do the Chassidus of the taking the weight off the donkey. I said I was going to do it, and I didn't. So let me just do it now, because it was the Hayom Yom for today. So even I'm concluding the Hayom Yom for today, which was the 28th of Shvat. Actually, today, in fact, this was not today. Today is the 29th. Yes, so the day yesterday, Wednesday, the Hayom Yom of Wednesday was one of the Baal Shem Tov teachers. When you see a chamor, a donkey, when you carefully examine your own materiality, your body, you will see your enemy, meaning that your materiality could seem to be your enemy, and it could feel like it's hating your divine soul that longs for godliness and the spiritual. And furthermore, you will see that it's lying under its burden. It's placed upon it, the body, by Hashem, namely that it should become refined through Torah and mitzvahs, but the body is lazy, right? It's like a donkey with this heavy package. The body is kind of lazy. It's burdened by this package of its obligation to commit to do mitzvahs. Then would you refrain from helping it? Would you not enable? So then what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to enable it, this body, this donkey of yours, to fulfill its mission. And instead, don't, you might think you need to, follow a path of mortification or or beating the donkey, or, you know, trying to break it down and make it not so material. Don't do this. Rather, you should approach it with the light of Torah and aid it, purify the body, refine it, but don't break it through mortification. So that's the Hasidic going deeper through the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, that the pshat is a donkey is there, and you should, if it's the enemy's donkey, you should still help the donkey, not have a burden. And the Hasidic is that the donkey is your own materiality, and you need to help your own materiality, you know, carry its burden and help it, make it, you know. So this commitment to Adar, this everyday a commitment to do something for Adar. So I just want to give you some ideas of things that you can do, because the idea is...
Can you post it also?
I don't know. That's asking a lot. Well, I'll start.
That would be really cool, is to get one a day, but that's really asking a lot.
This is the thing. This is the thing. I'm committed to posting something every day that's going to be a joyful thing that I did, or a happy thing, or a gratitude thing, or a positive thing. I'm going to have to post it every day because I've committed to posting it every
On
day.
what? On Facebook or on? Can you do it on the WhatsApp on the Tiferet?
Maybe I'll do it on the WhatsApp. I'll do it on this chat, and I'll also do it maybe on the Wilderness 2020 chat.
I'm going to commit to trying to do it too, in your inspiration.
Good. So let me give you a list of things to do in Adar, and then you can report on this in this thing. Commit to increasing joy in your life. So, you know, do things that give you joy and pleasure. Eliminate or reduce what does not generate joy in your life, and be more open to what does. So, you know, review and see. Like, a lot of times people are stuck in doing things that we really don't feel good about, and maybe we don't have to be doing them. It's not, you know, we're trying to get out of that suffering mentality. Serve Hashem with joy. And I didn't talk about this at all. Wipe out your personal Amalek. I'm going to come back to that. See God's hand in your life. Notice all the Hashgacha Pratis things and comment on them maybe for your post. And the last one is give charity, extra charity every day. But I want to come back to this: wipe out your personal Amalek. Amalek is the power of doubting your value, doubting your competence, doubting your spirituality, doubting the value of your deeds, doubting your own value. So we're going to be commanded to remember Amalek. It's the Torah reading before Purim. Amalek is that force that wants to bring you down and knock you out and make you feel less than. So, you know, every day try to, you know, wipe out Amalek. So that's the commitment. And I think it's a wonderful thing, because there's so much negativity and fear and blah, blah. And I think this could be a great antidote to that. And so I encourage everyone to do it and sign up. You don't have to pay or write your name anyway. You just say, I'm in. And Susan said already, I'm in. So yay. And I hope that this will help, you know, really spread a lot of positive energy in Adar. And if there are any comments or questions, this is the time for them.